I spotted my daughter at Union Station in downtown Chicago, clutching my 5-year-old grandson Lucas so tightly against her chest that I knew in one heartbeat something was terribly wrong. Her expensive black puffer coat hung on her frame like a ghost of who she used to be. The fabric stained, torn at every edge, sleeves far too long now. She wore cheap $20 sneakers with the soles peeling off. Her hands were trembling uncontrollably, and there was absolutely no sign of the 2020 Honda Accord I had bought her for her birthday the year before. "Emily, where's the car I gave you?" I asked, the words coming out sharper than I meant them to. What she told me next made my blood boil in a way I had not felt in 25 years. Her husband Noah and his mother Margaret had stolen the car, had stolen her entire paycheck, every single dollar, had left her with only $80 a week, and had threatened to take Lucas away forever. That was the moment I realized they had made a fatal mistake. They had targeted the wrong family. Before this story changes everything. If you're watching this story, please subscribe to the channel, like button, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I had not seen Emily in almost 3 months. The excuses about work and exhaustion had worn thin by early October, and honestly, I had stopped pushing. That Thursday afternoon, I found myself waiting on the main concourse of Union Station in downtown Chicago, watching the commuter crowd shuffle past, the old brick walls echoing with the familiar sounds of arriving and departing trains, the metallic screech of wheels on tracks, the murmur of hundreds of travelers moving through their lives. I checked my watch. 3:22. Emily's train was due any minute. I spotted her before she saw me. She stepped off the platform entrance, and something twisted in my chest. This was not the Emily I knew. The woman walking toward me was a stranger wearing my daughter's face. Her puffer jacket hung loose on her frame, the expensive black fabric now stained and frayed at the edges. She wore cheap shoes, the kind sold online for $20, their soles worn paper-thin, but it was her face that hit me hardest. Gaunt, cheekbones too pronounced, eyes haunted by something I could not yet name. And her hands. They were trembling as she held Lucas's hand, our 5-year-old grandson clinging to her leg like he was afraid she might disappear. "Dad," Emily said when she finally noticed me, her voice small, almost fragile. We hugged, but there was no warmth in it, no relief at seeing her father, just a mechanical embrace between two people going through the motions. I pulled back, holding her at arm's length. "Where is your car?" The question came out sharper than I intended. I'd bought her that Honda Accord the year before, a 2020 model, reliable, practical, the kind of car a young mother should drive. "I sold it," she said quietly, not meeting my eyes. I felt the first real spike of anger, but also recognition. In 25 years of intelligence work, I had learned to read people. It was a skill honed through thousands of interactions, watching micro-expressions, body language, understanding the 1,000 tiny ways humans betray their emotions. And everything I was seeing right now told me one thing. My daughter was in danger. "We needed the money," Emily continued, still not looking at me. Lucas's grip on her leg tightened, and the boy's wide eyes finally found mine. I could read people. It was a skill that had kept me alive for 2.5 decades, that had made me valuable in rooms where lives hung in the balance. It had taught me to see patterns, to identify threats, to understand when someone was afraid. And right now, looking at my daughter standing in the middle of Union Station with holes in her shoes and trembling hands, I knew Emily was living in fear. Something had happened, something terrible, and whatever it was not over. We found a quiet corner table at a local cafe in downtown Chicago, The lunch rush had faded, leaving the place nearly empty, except for an elderly couple in the back and a businessman reading the Chicago Tribune. I ordered hot chocolate for Lucas, who had finally stopped clinging to his mother. The boy sat quietly, sipping from the too-hot mug, his eyes darting nervously between us. "Dad," Emily started, her voice barely above a whisper. She wrapped her hands around a cold coffee cup, fingers white at the knuckles. "There's something I need to tell you. I don't know how to. I've wanted to tell you for months. I waited. 25 years in intelligence work had taught me patience. People talk when you give them space. They fill the silence with truth. It started about 7 months ago." She continued, her eyes fixed on the coffee cup. "Noah's mother, Margaret. She started visiting more. At first it was sweet. She wanted to spend time with Lucas, help out with dinner, that kind of thing. But then it changed how I asked, keeping my voice level, though something cold had begun settling in my stomach. She started saying things like, 'Honey, Lucas should have security, real security. That condo from your grandmother is a good start, but you should really put his name on it.' Little comments at first, nothing aggressive." Lucas turned to look at his mother, sensing the tension. She touched his hair gently, but her hand was trembling. "I told her no," Emily said. "I told her it was my grandmother's home, that I wanted to keep it in the family that way, as my inheritance, my responsibility. I explained it to her several times. Each time she just smiled and said, 'Well, we'll see. We'll see.' I repeated the words in my mind. Margaret was not taking no for an answer. "But Dad," Emily's voice cracked slightly. "It didn't stop there. When I kept refusing, she got different, colder. She started calling Noah at work, filling his head with ideas. She would tell him I was being selfish, that I didn't care about Lucas's future, that a good mother would want to secure her son's inheritance." I could see Emily's shoulders tightening as she talked, her chin trembling slightly. "Noah came home one night and told me that his mother said if I really loved Lucas, I would transfer the deed. He said she was just being practical, that she was right, that modern mothers need to think about these things." Emily's hands were shaking now. I told him no. I had explained why. But when his mother said it, suddenly he agreed with her. "Your husband sided with his mother," I said quietly. "Over and over," Emily whispered. And then Margaret started getting impatient. That's when the tone shifted. That's when she stopped asking and started demanding. I felt something shift inside me. Demanding. Not asking. Not suggesting. Demanding. "She came to the house," Emily continued, her eyes finally meeting mine. "She sat in my living room drinking my coffee and told me that if I did not sign the property over to Lucas, which really meant to her, through Noah, there would be consequences. She said it so calmly. Dad, so matter-of-fact, like she was reading the weather report. My hands clenched on the table, and I forced them to relax. And then," Emily said, leaning forward slightly, her voice barely audible, "things escalated. She started threatening me in ways I didn't understand at first, ways that made me terrified. The quiet intensity of her final words hung in the air between us. I saw it then. Not just fear in my daughter's eyes, but something worse. Resignation, like she had already accepted that her situation was hopeless. I had no idea yet what those threats were, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever Margaret had done, whatever she had threatened Emily with, it was about to become my problem, and I was going to solve it. Emily's voice dropped to barely a whisper as she continued. Her hands trembled around the untouched hot chocolate, and I noticed she was picking at a paper napkin, shredding it into smaller and smaller pieces. Margaret showed me a video. She said, each word seeming to cost her effort. She called me, said she wanted to talk about something important. When I went to the house, she played it on her laptop, a video of what I asked, though part of me already knew the answer was not going to be simple. Of me, supposedly, she said. She said it was me screaming at Lucas, shaking him, calling him names. Dad, it looked real. It looked like I was hurting my son. Emily's voice cracked completely. But I never did that. I know I didn't. But when I watched it, even I almost believed it. I felt my jaw clench. She told me she had someone edit clips from different moments. Times when I was disciplining him. Times when I was frustrated. Moments where my voice was raised. But they were taken out of context, spliced together to make it look like abuse. Emily could not finish. She just shook her head. Like abuse, I said quietly. Yes, Emily whispered. She said if I did not sign the condo over, she would send it to Child Protective Services. She said they would take Lucas away from me. She said I would be convicted of child abuse and never see my son again. The couple in the back of the cafe looked up briefly, sensing something in my involuntary sharp intake of breath. I forced myself to stay still, to listen. But that is not all. Emily continued, her voice getting smaller. She also had forged documents, financial records from my company. She said she had a contact who helped her get copies of my work files, and she had altered them to make it look like I had been stealing company money. Thousands of dollars. The signatures were fake. The numbers were changed, but they looked real enough. She said if I did not comply, she would send those documents to my boss and the police. She would say I was embezzling. She told me I would go to prison and lose custody of Lucas either way, either through CPS or through criminal charges. I understood then. Margaret had not made random threats. She had constructed a trap with multiple pressure points, each one designed to destroy a different part of my daughter's life. The threat of losing her son, the threat of imprisonment, the threat of being labeled a criminal. It was sophisticated, it was cruel, and it was working. Noah started enforcing her rules, Emily said, her eyes finally meeting mine. They were red-rimmed now. He would take my bank card on payday, withdraw my entire paycheck, and hand it over to his mother. I got $80 a week for everything. Food, gas, Lucas's daycare, everything. When I questioned him about it, he said his mother was right. He said I was being selfish, that families had to stick together, that his mother was just protecting the family's interests. Your husband, I said, my voice tight, is complicit in this. He does not see it that way, Emily said quietly. He genuinely believes his mother is protecting us. He thinks I should just sign the condo over and then everything would be fine. The weight of what she was describing settled over me like a physical thing. 3 months of systematic pressure, financial control, threats to her child, threats to her freedom, threats to her career. 3 months of compliance, 3 months of fear. I set my coffee cup down very carefully. My hands wanted to shake with the force of what I was feeling. The truth she had just revealed ignited a rage I had not felt in decades. Emily, I said, cutting her off gently. You did the right thing telling me. But my mind was already working, already processing, already calculating. Margaret Taylor had made a critical error. She had targeted the wrong family. She had threatened the wrong people. And in about 20 minutes, she was going to discover what it meant to have someone with my particular set of skills and my particular motivation decide that enough was enough. I sat in silence for a long moment, processing 3 months of systematic abuse, processing the sophistication of Margaret's threats, processing the fact that my own son-in-law had become her instrument. Then I looked at my daughter and knew exactly what I had to do. I reached across the table and took her hand. Her skin was ice cold. "Emily, listen to me," I said quietly, aware that my voice had changed, hardened. "What Margaret Taylor has done is not a family dispute. This is organized crime, extortion, blackmail, document forgery, multiple felonies, and I know how to handle this." She stared at me, uncertainty flickering across her face. "I need to tell you something about myself," I continued, "something I have not talked about in a very long time. I spent 25 years in Army intelligence, special operations, not desk work, real operational work, surveillance, threat analysis, recruitment, neutralization of threats." Emily's grip on my hand tightened slightly. "I know how to gather information people want to keep hidden. I know how to identify vulnerabilities. I know how to build a case that holds up." I paused, letting that sink in. "More importantly, I know how this ends." "Dad, what are you saying?" Emily asked, her voice small. "I am saying Margaret made a mistake. She targeted the wrong family. She threatened the wrong people. This just became personal. My jaw was tight. And now we are going to end this." I laid out the plan simply. 4 phases. Phase 1. We gather evidence. Every threat she has made. Every forged document. Every recorded conversation. We collect it all. I have people who can help with that. "People," Emily repeated weakly. "Former colleagues. People I trust." I said, "We will have audio recordings of her threats, analysis of those fake documents, documentation of the financial control." I squeezed her hand. Phase 2. We bring Noah into this. Not through force, through truth. We show him what his mother has done, and we give him a choice. He will never. Emily started. He will when he realizes his mother has been manipulating him, when he understands what he is actually complicit in. That is human nature. People resist until they see the truth clearly. Then they choose. Emily looked uncertain, but did not interrupt. Phase 3. We set a trap using marked money. Margaret is so confident in her control over Noah. She will take what he hands her without question. We document every transaction. Phase 4. We bring her to meet with a lawyer to finalize the condo transfer. CPS gets notified. Police arrive with a warrant. We catch her with the evidence in hand. The threats on record. Everything. Emily's eyes had widened. "You have really thought this through." "I have had about 5 minutes to think this through," I said. "But I have had 25 years training for this exact type of operation." I leaned forward slightly. "But Emily, listen to me carefully. For this to work, you have to act normal, completely normal. You have to keep handing over money. You have to keep enduring her presence. You have to let her believe you are broken and compliant. Can you do that?" She nodded slowly. "I know it is asking a lot, but if she suspects anything has changed, she will destroy the evidence and disappear. We need her to feel completely in control right up until the moment she is not." "How long?" Emily whispered. "A few weeks, maybe 5 weeks. Then this ends." For the first time since I had seen her at Union Station, I watched my daughter's shoulders relax slightly. Not because the situation had changed, but because she was not alone anymore. 3 days after meeting Emily at Union Station, I made the first call. Marcus Reed answered on the second ring. "It has been a while," I said. "Yeah," he replied. "I was wondering when you would need me again." Marcus Reed had been my tech specialist for 15 years. If there was a device that needed to be placed, recorded, or analyzed, Marcus was the man. I explained the situation in clinical terms. No emotion, just facts. By the time I hung up, we had a plan. 2 days later, Marcus placed a micro-transmitter in Margaret's house in Evanston. He had spent 2 days surveilling her schedule, timing it perfectly. The device was smaller than a grain of rice, the receiver hidden in the adjacent apartment. Within 48 hours, we had audio streaming into encrypted files on my secure server. Daniel Brooks took point on surveillance, while Marcus worked the electronics. Daniel followed every movement, documented every meeting, every phone call, every interaction. He was building a map of the operation. And then the recordings started coming in. Margaret's voice crystal clear through the transmitter, discussing her plans with casual brutality. That fool Emily will sign eventually. If she does not, Ryan's guys can pay her another visit, or we lean harder on the daycare angle. Then on day 9, Noah is such a doormat. I tell him jump, he asks how high. He is useless anyway. Once I get that property sold, I will cut him loose with enough to keep him quiet. She was planning to discard her own son like garbage. Owen Peterson, now working for a private forensics firm, took the video and documents. Within 3 days, he confirmed what I had suspected. The video was a montage. Clips from different moments spliced together. Context removed. The financial documents were altered using basic image editing software. The forgeries were sloppy. An expert would demolish them in court. We had everything we needed except one thing. I arranged a meeting with Noah at a coffee shop in Oak Park. He arrived looking confused, tired, the look of a man who had been trapped under his mother's thumb his entire life. I did not waste time with pleasantries. I played the first recording, his mother's voice cold and calculating, discussing how to pressure Emily further. Then the second recording. Margaret's assessment of Noah himself. I watched his face as he heard his mother say she considered him useless, as he heard her plan to abandon him once the property was sold. The color drained from his face. His hands started shaking. She has been manipulating you, I said quietly. Using you. She does not care about you or Emily or Lucas. She cares about money. That is it. Noah could not finish a sentence. I need your help, I continued. I need your testimony about everything she has done, and I need you to keep acting normal. Can you do that? For a long moment, he just stared at the phone on the table. Then he nodded. Yes, he said finally. I will help you. Over those next weeks, something shifted inside me. I had spent years convincing myself I was retired, that this part of my life was over. But with each call, each piece of evidence, each small victory, I felt purpose again. The knowledge that I was still good at what I did, that I was still capable of protecting what mattered. By day 18, every piece was in place. The recordings, the forensic analysis, Noah's cooperation, Daniel's surveillance data. It was all locked down, documented, ready to go. Margaret Taylor did not know it yet, but she was already caught. 5 weeks into the operation, everything was in position. I sat down with Emily one final time to explain the endgame. She looked exhausted. The weight of 5 weeks of pretending to be broken was showing on her face. I need you to take one final step, I said quietly. Tomorrow we set the trap. What do you mean? Emily asked, though I could see the apprehension in her eyes. You are going to call Noah. You are going to tell him you have decided to sign the condo over, that you want to meet with a lawyer to finalize the transfer. Emily's face went pale. But Dad, that is my inheritance, my grandmother's home. I know, I said gently, taking her hand. But at this stage, Margaret is so confident in her control over you that she will lower her guard completely. When she thinks she has won, she makes mistakes. She reveals herself. And the condo. Once this is over, it is yours again. The transfer will never be finalized, but Margaret needs to believe it will be. She nodded slowly, understanding the necessity. I had already contacted Malcolm Hayes, My former colleague in law enforcement had made the arrangements quietly. We had a warrant standing by. Detective Laura Mitchell, who had worked white-collar crimes for 15 years, understood the case immediately and had brought in a prosecutor. We had identified an attorney, Sarah Brooks, who specialized in family law and had agreed to participate in the sting without revealing her role to Margaret. The courthouse in downtown Chicago was selected. It was public enough to seem legitimate, secure enough for what needed to happen. Everything was ready. That evening, Emily made the call. "Noah, I have been thinking about what your mother said," she told him, her voice carefully controlled. "I want to do the right thing for Lucas's future. I am ready to sign." I listened through the secure line, monitoring for any sign of suspicion. There was none. Noah accepted her words at face value, probably relieved that the pressure would finally end. Within an hour, Margaret was on the phone with her son, her voice sharp with barely contained triumph. "I told you she would crack. These women always do when they understand what is at stake. Call that lawyer. Tell her we are ready to move forward tomorrow, 11 o'clock in the morning." Then Margaret called Ryan Miller. The conversation lasted 7 minutes. Through the transmitter, I heard her lay out the plan with military precision. "Just in case that fool Emily tries anything stupid tomorrow. I want muscle there. Nothing obvious. Just stand in the background. Remind her what happens when people do not cooperate." Ryan agreed without hesitation. I saved the recording. That was the moment Margaret revealed her full hand. Threatening presence, intimidation, coercion. It was all there. Documented. Impossible to deny. At midnight, I called Malcolm Hayes. "Tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock. The courthouse, all systems go, ready." Malcolm replied. I turned to Emily, who was sitting in my living room. Her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. "Tomorrow morning, you walk into that lawyer's office. You bring the condo documents. Margaret will come. Ryan will be there. Noah might be there too. And at the exact moment Margaret tries to pressure you into signing, the police arrive with a warrant." "What if something goes wrong?" Emily whispered. "Nothing will go wrong," I said. And I meant it. Because I had done this before. Because we had evidence. Because Margaret thought she had already won. I checked my phone one final time. Marcus's secure network showed all systems green. Daniel had documented every movement. Owen's forensic analysis was airtight. Malcolm had coordinated with the district attorney's office. Noah was ready to testify. The recordings were backed up in 4 separate locations. Everything was ready. "Tomorrow," I told my daughter, "your life changes. Tomorrow this ends." She looked at me with eyes that held equal parts hope and terror. "I trust you, Dad," she said simply. That was all I needed to hear. The morning of the operation arrived faster than I expected. I parked my car across from the downtown Chicago courthouse, watching the entrance. I checked my watch. 9:55. In 5 minutes, Emily would walk into that building with the condo documents. In 10 minutes, my daughter's nightmare would end. The phone in my pocket buzzed. A text from Malcolm Hayes. "All units in position. Ready when you are." I typed back, "Go." Inside the courthouse, Emily sat across from Sarah Brooks in a small conference room. Margaret Taylor was just arriving. Ryan Miller close behind her. A man with a criminal record and a mean face. The perfect enforcer. Noah was already there, hidden in an observation room, prepared to testify. Sarah Brooks, playing her role perfectly, smiled professionally at Margaret. "Miss Taylor, before we proceed, I need to confirm something. Miss Griffin, are you signing these documents completely of your own free will?" "Correct. No one is pressuring you." It was the question that would either lock Margaret into her lies or give her a chance to escape. Margaret did not hesitate. Of course, Margaret said smoothly. Emily has always been unreasonable about this property. I am just here to make sure she understands that family comes first. Right. Emily's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the pen. Sarah Brooks noticed. I knew she noticed. She was looking for exactly this kind of evidence, the physical manifestation of coercion. Margaret leaned closer to Emily, her voice dropping. Your little boy needs security. This is what a real mother does. That was the moment the conference room door flew open. Detective Laura Mitchell walked in, followed by 4 uniformed officers. Behind them came Malcolm Hayes. I watched from the hallway, my heart pounding with the kind of intensity I had not felt in decades. Not the adrenaline of a military operation, but something deeper, the satisfaction of seeing justice about to be served. Margaret Taylor, Detective Mitchell said, her voice steady and official. You are under arrest for extortion, blackmail, and document forgery. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court. Ryan Miller moved to run. One of the officers was on him in seconds. Ryan Miller, you are also under arrest for conspiracy to commit extortion and intimidation. Margaret's face went white. For a moment, she simply stared at Detective Mitchell as if the words were not registering. Then her expression shifted from shock to fury to disbelief to rage. What? This is insane! I have not done anything, she screamed, her voice climbing higher with each word. This is a setup. Someone put you up to this. That was when Noah stepped out from the observation room. I did, he said quietly, looking at his mother. I've done everything you told me to do, Mom, for years, and I am done. He turned to Detective Mitchell. I will testify to all of it, the threats she made, the documents she forged, how she made me take Emily's paychecks and hand them over, how she said she would cut me loose once she got the property. All of it. Margaret's expression shifted from shock to fury. You traitor, she spat. After everything I have done for you, I am your mother. You are a criminal, Noah said simply, and you deserve what is coming. As the officers led Margaret out, she was still screaming, her voice echoing down the courthouse hallway. Emily put you up to this. She manipulated you. This is a setup. But no one was listening anymore. I walked into the conference room where Emily was still sitting. She looked up at me, and the moment our eyes met, something broke inside her. Tears streamed down her face, not from fear, but from relief, from liberation, from the weight of 5 weeks finally lifting. I pulled her into an embrace. She sobbed against my shoulder, her entire body shaking with the force of release. It is over, I said. You are free. Malcolm approached with one of the forensic specialists. They had searched Ryan's apartment 20 minutes earlier. We found the marked money, Malcolm said. All of it. Serial numbers match. We have also recovered communications between Margaret and Ryan outlining the intimidation strategy. What about the documents, I asked, keeping one hand on Emily's shoulder as she composed herself. Forged. Owen's report confirms it definitively. The video is a montage. Clips spliced from different moments. Context removed. The signatures are fake. The numbers were altered using basic editing software. Malcolm smiled slightly. This case is airtight. They will not walk. Emily looked up at me, tears still streaming down her face. Is it really over? Yes, I said. It is really over. 6 months later, I sat in a park not far from Emily's new apartment in Lincoln Park. She had been promoted to head of the analytics department. The company had apologized for not catching the embezzlement scheme earlier and offered her a significant raise as compensation. Lucas was thriving at his new school, his laughter genuine again, the sound of a child who no longer lived in fear. And I realized something profound about life, family, and second chances. Emily had rebuilt her world piece by piece. The apartment was brighter than the old one, filled with actual furniture instead of hand-me-downs. She had bought new clothes, not expensive ones, but nice ones, real ones. She smiled more. Her eyes had that light back. Lucas would run to me now when I visited, throwing his arms around my neck without hesitation. There was no more flinching, no more watching for threats. He was just a kid again, a kid who loved his grandfather and was not afraid. Noah visited every Saturday. I will be honest, I did not trust him at first, but he was trying. He took Lucas to the park, to the movies, bought him books about science and history. He was learning to be a father again after his mother had twisted him into something else entirely. Progress was not linear, but it was real. Emily and I had returned to our old tradition, chess on Sunday evenings. We would sit at her kitchen table, moving pieces in comfortable silence. The kind of silence that only exists between people who truly know each other. One night after she had checkmated me for the 4th time that month, she smiled and said, "I am getting better." "You always were," I replied. "You just forgot for a while." The court dates had come and gone. Margaret Taylor received 6 years for extortion, blackmail, and document forgery. Ryan Miller got 9 years for organizing the intimidation campaign. Noah was not charged. His cooperation with law enforcement had made the difference. The prosecutor called it one of the cleanest cases she had seen in 20 years. Just as I thought. Not perfect, but real. One evening, as we sat in her living room with Lucas already asleep upstairs, Emily asked me something I had not expected. "Dad, how did you know," she said, "how did you know I was not completely broken?" I considered the question carefully, because I have read people for 25 years, and what I saw in you at that train station was not a victim who was finished. It was a woman who was temporarily trapped. There is a difference. One accepts her fate. The other is waiting for a way out. I paused. "You were waiting." Emily's eyes grew wet. "I am glad you saw that. I am glad you trusted me enough to tell me," I said. That took more courage than anything else. We sat in silence for a moment. And then I told her something I had been thinking about since the moment this all began. Never give up, Emily. No matter how bad things get, no matter how trapped you feel, there is always a way out if you do not lose hope. That is the real lesson here. Not the intelligence work, not the planning. The real lesson is that you were never truly alone. She reached across and took my hand. "Thank you, Dad," she said simply, "for everything, for never giving up on me." "That is what fathers do," I replied. "We protect, we fight, we love. That is the job. That is all it ever is." We sat together, not speaking, just existing in the quiet aftermath of survival. And I realized something that 25 years in intelligence work had never taught me. This was the most important operation I had ever completed. Not because of the tactics or the planning or the evidence gathered, but because I had saved my daughter, because my family was whole again, because love, not technique, not strategy, not years of training, had been the real weapon all along. Looking back at everything that happened, I realized I made mistakes too. For months I stayed silent. I did not push hard enough when Emily made excuses. I told myself I was respecting her boundaries, but the truth is, I was lazy. I did not want to face what might be wrong. Do not be like me. If someone you love is withdrawing, if their voice changes, if they stop calling, do not ignore those signs. Push. Ask questions. Sometimes the people we care about most need us to be brave enough to demand the truth, even when they are not ready to give it. Here is what I learned from this whole operation. Weakness is not asking for help. Silence is not safety. And love is not passive. It is active. It is showing up It is fighting. When Margaret thought she could destroy my family, she learned something she will never forget. Justice finds its way. But more than that, I learned something deeper. I spent 25 years serving my country thinking that was my purpose. But my real mission was always waiting at home. Being a father, protecting my daughter, teaching my grandson that real strength comes from doing the right thing no matter the cost. I share these grandpa stories because they matter. This is one of those true story moments that reminds us we are not alone. If you have a true story like this, if you are trapped like Emily was, reach out. Get help. Do not suffer in silence. If this story moved you, comment below with your story. Tell me what you learned from my journey. Share this with someone who needs hope right now. And remember, the strongest people are not those who never fall. They are the ones who get back up, the ones who ask for help, the ones who trust their family. That is what these true story moments teach us. Thank you for being here, for listening, for believing in justice and family. If you like this story, please like this video. Subscribe and hit the bell for more stories that celebrate the courage it takes to protect the ones we love. Thank you for your time and for staying with us until the very end.